The Paris Metro is absolutely great for families who prepare ahead of time and really think about how to use this system and how it's going to work for their family. But what I can tell you for sure is it's not great for all families. And in fact, I would suggest that some families visiting Europe skip it altogether. Today, I'm really going to be going over my experience taking my family to Paris. We actually just returned from a multi-generational trip. We were traveling with my wife, my 6-year-old son, and his grandparents, and we had a great time. Paris is a city that's filled with culture and history, and it's a must-see for every family. And if your family's able to use the metro, it takes a city that's very, very large and makes it feel manageable and fairly small. So in today's video, I'm going to really go over if the Paris Metro is going to work for your family, the no-goes, times I would absolutely not take my family on the metro, and really talk about the system and what to expect before you get there with your family. How's that sound? You guys want to come along and learn about the Paris Metro today? As you're planning your family's trip on the Paris Metro, there's a few things that I think you should really keep in mind. The Paris Metro is a historic metro system, and it's also heavily used by both Parisians and tourists. On average, every day, over 4 million people ride on the Paris Metro system, and throughout a year, 1.5 billion people ride on the Paris Metro. The other thing that these metros have in common throughout the 303 stations across 16 different lines is every single station is different, but they're all historic, and a vast majority of the stations lack elevators and lack escalators. So before you decide if you're going to take your family on the Paris Metro system, I really want you to think about, can your family handle walking up and down 3 or 4 flights of stairs? Now, not every station has that many stairs, but many do, so keep that in mind as you're planning your trip to Paris. If this trip to Paris is the first time that your family's really used a major metro system before, I think there's a few things you should really prepare for and know about ahead of time. The biggest one of those on the Paris Metro is realizing that it is a very busy place. There's commuters, there's tourists, and everybody's trying to get on those trains. That's how they get around the city in Paris. So you need to be mentally prepared for lots of people, lots of crowds, and tight trains of people packed to the brim. Now, what I found when my family was last there in July of this year is that the metro system itself can get quite hot. Now, specifically, that's when you're on the trains. Those trains aren't air conditioned and they get really warm, especially when there's a lot of people on board. Now, we did find that it was quite pleasant and nice within the underground tunnel system itself, waiting at the platforms, walking to the up and down those stairs. That was all really pretty pleasant and comfortable. It wasn't too warm for us. A couple of other things that you're going to want to keep in mind is that the metro can especially be an overwhelming place for small children. When they get onto those tight cars, they're at the level of pretty much everybody else's butt, their waist, and so your smaller kids, they're probably going to want to be picked up. Or a strategy my family always uses is we try to get on the train and find a seat right away. You'll often find that Parisians, that tourists, they're going to stand up and offer you a seat if you're traveling with a young child or if you're traveling with grandparents, things like that. But I do think for families, it can be a really good idea to practice traveling on a subway system, on a metro, before you leave your domestic location. So visiting cities in the United States like Chicago, that can help you kind of build your confidence to be able to use the Paris Metro system with ease. Now, I can tell you, after visiting Paris a few times with my family, we absolutely love it, and I think you will too, after you know how to use this system. Okay, look, there's a few times where I'd absolutely say do not go on the Paris Metro system with your family. The first one is if you're traveling with a stroller, don't try to take that stroller onto the Paris Metro. There are too many stairs and it's far too tight trying to get a stroller onto most of those metro stops. You're just going to be too stressed and it's just not going to be a great experience for you. The other thing that I would absolutely say don't take your family on the Paris Metro is if you can't do stairs. If you can't get up and down those stairs, skip the Metro altogether. Find another form of transportation. And the last one that I'd really think about is if you're traveling with a really large family, a big group of people, I don't know if the Paris Metro is going to be the best. You might be a little bit too stressed trying to keep your group together to get on that busy metro system. So think about that as you're traveling with your family. Put that into your thought process, and I think you can decide on your own if the Paris Metro is going to work for you. Now, the nice thing here is really realize that you can try out the Paris Metro, you can give it a whirl, and it's not going to be the end of the day. So buy a pass, give it a try one time, go from one location to another, see if it's going to work for your family. If it doesn't, that's okay. There's a lot of other great ways to get around Paris. Specifically, if you can't use the Metro, Paris is connected by a ton of buses that don't involve those stairs that we talked about. There's also a great G7 taxi app. That's the official taxi app to get around the city. And there's also Ubers within Paris. That's a great way to get around. So just because your family can't use the Metro on this trip doesn't mean that you're not going to have a wonderful, absolutely enjoyable time when you're in Paris. My family just returned from Paris, and we used the Paris Metro to get all over the city. We took my 6-year-old son and his grandparents. We visited Montmartre. We took it to the Eiffel Tower. We took it to the Tuileries Gardens, and we were able to effectively use that system. Now, one of my favorite things about being in Paris this last time around is I was talking to my son after the trip, and I was asking him what his favorite things were to do in Paris. And what really just amazed me is his answer was actually riding the Paris Metro. And I was so amazed by that because I thought that was going to be one of those times where he was kind of feeling stressed, he was feeling overwhelmed, but he told me that's what he loved about visiting Paris. He loved that experience. And what it tells me is that my wife and I were helping our son to be a global traveler. We're teaching him when he's young how to use these transit systems so he can be a confident traveler as he ages. And that's something that I absolutely love about taking my son, taking children to Europe. We're teaching them the skills they need to be lifelong travelers. And to me, there's nothing more satisfying than that. So I hope you really consider taking your kids to Paris, going on the Metro with them, and teaching them when they're young. There's nothing more exciting than that to me. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for tuning in today, for sticking around. I hope this video has given you a really good idea if the Paris Metro is going to work well for your family. If you found this video to be helpful, the next video I'm going to put together is actually one that specifically talks about how to use the Metro. So how to buy transit cards, how to navigate the system, the nuts and bolts of how to get on that Paris system like a pro. So if that sounds interesting, I'll link it right here when that video is ready. But otherwise, thanks so much for sticking around, for watching today. Hope you have a fabulous rest of your day. And don't forget to be kind and love everybody. We'll see you next time.